Welcome to South by Southwest 2021 filmmaker panel for a wonderful film that I hope you all get to see very, very soon. Tom Petty, Somewhere You Feel Free, a full-length documentary look at the making of Tom Petty's landmark 1994 album, Wildflowers. I'm David Fricke, and I am very pleased and privileged to be joined here by executive producer Adria Petty, Tom's daughter, director Mary Wharton. We have producer Peter Afterman, co-producer Sarah Haber, and the film's editor, Keiko Gonzalez.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. I'm going to start with Adria. As executive producer and as Tom's daughter, what was the story you felt needed to be told about your dad, and particularly this record?
I think that, in this context, the story that was told was really shaped by Mari and Mary. I've talked to my dad about Wildflowers a lot, but it was also a time where he was really private. He was transitioning a lot of different parts of his life. So as an 18, 19-year-old, he didn't share everything with me, but he shared the music very generously with me at that time. So to me, the music always was a world. It was a big world. And I think Mary, where she really took her own, and I can't say this enough, her own approach to this film, her own goggles with Mari in the edit room, and really kind of set some criteria for herself to deliver the film that you see. And I really appreciate the objectivity of it. I think I could not be more proud to be working with her and Peter and Sarah and Mari on this, because they really made it their own and they really digested it like they had lived with it for the years that we have, honestly.
At one point, it's about halfway through, and Tom actually says, "I'm not obligated to bare my soul to nobody. It's very hard to sit down and talk about yourself constantly. I just want to be a musician." And in a way, a film like this slightly contradicts that desire for you, Mary, as the director. How do you respect that desire and at the same time open him up to people who will never get to know him in the same way?
It's always a tough balance, a tough sort of line to walk. And in this case, one of the things that we sort of realized really early on, Mari and I would listen to all these different interviews with Tom from over the years. That particular interview that you referenced was from 1994. It was like right in the middle of all of this Wildflowers period. And I thought it says a lot about him, that he was a very private person, and you can find all the clues for what you're looking for are in the music,
Mari, how did you, as an editor, figure out how to make that music work within the context of what was being said, and really the narrative and momentum of the making of the record?
I mean, I like to look at all the footage, and I like to hear all the music, and not just the music of the album and, on the new tracks that were available, but just really living in the radiance of the verité footage and what actually was filmed in the studio. And so what we initially did is I just sort of pulled apart all of the songs, and I would just watch, like, for example, when they're, working up to find a friend, and you see all of these nuanced moments of Tom, very private Tom writing and, with all the melodiousness and the musicality of that song. And so that sort of informed the stories that we were going to tell in certain sections, and not just about the stories behind the song, but really just contextualizing what was going on and just staying in that time.
Well, it's an interesting division of perspective because, as you say, he's speaking in the present tense. Mike, Benmont, Rick, Steve, they're all speaking in the present tense, but reflecting on events of, at this point, more than 25 years ago. And
Right.
it's an interesting approach in a documentary, because normally you have basically looking through the past as people reflect on things, or you have someone talking about what they're doing right now. And here you're actually, you've got both ends against the middle, which is really
Right.
something I haven't seen in a lot of music documentaries before.
It created a bit of a challenge, so we did have to really work on how we place things, and how Mari is such an amazing music editor, and that ability to sort of let the music sneak in at just the right places kind of helps to build this rhythm where it doesn't feel like you're getting whiplash of like, are we talking about the present or the past or tomorrow or yesterday? It's a delicate balance. It's sometimes, you have to tweak things a little bit in terms of in the editing, where you're like, the feeling is here and we'll take this piece and see how we can build around that.
Well, Peter, I'm a little curious, because, I know how records get made, but how do you produce a film about the making of a record and not make it feel like you're getting, sort of an audio course at a technical college?
Well, that's a great question. When I look at something like this, I'm looking at it from, is this something that I think that the audience is going to be able to kind of embrace? Is it going to be too inside baseball, where you're sort of, it's a little too much detail, but you don't get the kind of the bigger picture? Also, one of the things that I was very focused on, we all were, but it wasn't just too much talking, that the music really got to play. When I say about the music playing, I mean, a lot of music docs, a lot of them don't have a lot of music, A lot of them are just, you read
that is a really big complaint. I am so tired of watching music documentaries where you get 30 seconds of music, and I'm like, just give me the 5 minutes of the music. I'll take all the talking later. But it's really, the thing is, the music is what gets shortchanged the most. The narrative is the music.
Right, exactly.
Mike's got the big gun today.
That's why he sounds so small.
That's why I sound so small.
But let's shake this old building up if we can, all right?
Sarah, from what I understand, you were the lucky one who got to spend all the time in the Warner vaults and really got to dig through a lot of this material. And I'm basically curious, what is the origin of the studio reels? It was clearly documented in a very committed way.
So I was not personally involved in the discovery of that studio footage. That, as far as we know, was rediscovered by Adria and was filmed by Martin Atkins as he was filming a larger piece documenting mostly the tour following the album. So it was filmed over a period of 3 days of them in the studio. And then I think in going back, Adria discovered that it was such, an untapped resource considering what wasn't used for this, other film about the tour. My role in the vault, which I loved, was getting to go through and kind of look at everything else that existed in the Petty archive with the help of their great archivist, Allison Tavel, who is a huge asset. And we went through just kind of any beta tape, VHS, 3/4 inch, anything that we could find that had anything relevant to our time period, and go through and kind of match what content is actually on, this material that says "You Wreck Me." Is it the music video? Is it the filming? And really piece together kind of every other bit of, ephemera or existing footage. But there was a lot of digging to kind of find a lot of the original masters for all the things that we were going through and screening. And in the end, I think we uncovered a really great little collection of footage to help flesh it out.
It's a flathead camera, right?
So you have your Mellotron on too? Not yet.
Not yet, it's coming though.
Because we should probably mic the harmonium too. Or you could just play the organ, I suppose.
Actually, Adria, was that original material, was it shot in black and white?
Yeah. Around, I don't know when Martin Atkins got involved in this project or how. It was early on. And Martin started coming around and somehow managed to get my dad's confidence and comfort level to a place that I really don't think it had ever been, in terms of like coming in with big equipment and spending a lot of time in our home or in studio like that. We owe him a great debt for documenting all this stuff so beautifully analog and rough and crazy. And a lot of the texture of this film that I really admire is that it goes back to what's in the source and it just lets it be what it is. You can only imagine how I felt going, oh my God, there's footage of them making this record. There's footage of him and Rick making this record. This is insane. And sometimes it has sound. Only sometimes, but it's very, very exciting, And so, for me, it was really kind of like my dad going, keep going, There's stuff in here you haven't seen before. Keep digging, digging, And I really felt like he probably felt it was too unpolished, too raw, too revealing.
I like the idea of really looking at this like a real classic verité film, like really inspired by like the Maysles brothers' work, Grey Gardens and Pennebaker, where it's very rough and clunky sometimes. And we sort of let the film be what it was and put some pieces in there that would help us fill out things. And obviously having, the Heartbreakers telling us their stories and talking with Rick in that fabulous conversation were just, sort of special moments that help bring it to life.
Now, you mentioned, we were talking about real life being clunky. Real life couldn't be any clunkier than it is right now. And I'm wondering, Peter, say for yourself, what were the challenges of trying to wrangle this thing into completion given lockdown, quarantine?
Typically, one of the things that I like to do on projects I work on is I like to be in front of people, because I feel like when you can be in front of people, you can get stuff to happen. So what's incredible, I think, about the interviews that Mary did is, the Clubhouse interviews, is that she wasn't there. She was actually doing that remotely, which is incredible. When you think about, because again, when you want to be there and you want to look at the person and you want to talk to them and you want to do this.
Who was actually in the room talking to Mike and Benmont at the Clubhouse? Like
Sarah.
Yeah.
I was in the room, but Mary was asking all of the questions. Yeah, we had a really hilariously convoluted setup of Mary and I would talk on Zoom like this. We had another laptop that was hooked up to our camera monitors so that she could see all of the feeds. And then I think a third laptop that we set up for Zoom in front of our subjects so that they could have as close to a face-to-face conversation with Mary as is possible. But it really did speak to kind of how engaging of an interviewer Mary is, that even before we started rolling, Mary would have, Mike, Ben, Steve, engaged in such kind of deep conversation that once we got the cameras going, you would never know. And I don't think you do know, watching the film, that there wasn't Mary sitting there live in front of them.
How did you put
hard.
Mike and Benmont at ease?
I don't know exactly. I mean, I will say that for me, doing interviews this way was especially difficult because I felt like I had to work so much harder to get through the laptop. Like I was playing through the laptop. With Mike and Ben, they're perfectionists in their work, but they're also sort of, they wanted to be sure that like what they were saying was accurate. And I think the fact that by the time I interviewed them, I had at least a good enough working knowledge of the subject matter. That's one of my favorite parts about making documentaries, is all of the amazing, interesting people that I get to talk to. And I get to sit down with these people, and everybody else in the room has to just shut up while I have this cool conversation. It's really a privilege.
And the recording 12-string is a Rickenbacker Roger McGuinn model from the 60s. And I think I used this on You Wreck Me.
This is a film about an album that Tom made really about a crossroads in his life. A lot of it is generated from a turbulence in his home life, in his marriage, etc. And what I think is really striking is that it's done with a really fantastic and very powerful and incisive team of women. That's not a question, but I'm throwing it out there for anyway.
But half of the audience for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers we found out recently, which was really strange, right? 51% women.
Actually, it was obvious at the gigs. It was very obvious at the gigs because
too. I think it's really cool. I like seeing a very unexpected group of people dive into this with such diligence and curatorial skill. That it wasn't just handed to the most obvious person.
Was this something, Adria and Peter, that you wanted to see, or was this something that just came out of trying to figure out the best way forward to tell the story?
I think she was just the best person for the job, period. And we're very blessed, remarkably blessed. Could not be more irrelevant that she is a woman, except for the fact that she under-promised and over-delivered, like most women have to in work environments.
In a sense, it isn't relevant, but it's actually a very powerful factor And I think that's one of the reasons the film resonates in the way that it does. And especially since most of the people talking in it are guys.
It's very funny because a lot of people think women our age don't know about rock and roll. And it's funny because there's a lot of women on the screen today.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know,
there's this idea that you have to, especially I think in rock and roll, but in Hollywood as well, that, you know, things have to stay cool, you know, and I don't think that Mari and I ever thought in choosing, you know, which parts of the story we were going to tell coming from a woman's perspective or a man's perspective, or whether that, you know, it was just with most documentaries, you just are, you're looking for the cream that rises to the top. You're looking for whatever it is that touches you in whatever way. And sometimes it touches you because it's funny and silly and goofy, but other times it touches you because it's just a badass guitar riff, you know, that gets you in the gut.
29 minutes to showtime, 29 minutes to showtime. I should change clothes now. All right.
Well, you made one of my favorite films of last year, which was Jimmy Carter, Rock and Roll President. And you also worked on that great Joan Baez documentary. How would you say it's not so much better, but different to work with the living artist versus having to build the artist after he's left?
We definitely leaned on Adria to, you know, tell us what she felt like her father would have wanted to be, you know, said about this record. But
I actually do think he would really love this film. He might bitch a little bit about certain mixes or versions, but he would. But I think he would like the film very much. I really do.
What was really fascinating for me in this project was getting to see him struggle a little bit, getting to see that he wasn't always sure of himself. And I think to sort of be able to see Tom in a way of just being a human, a supremely talented and intelligent and funny and cool dude, but he was also, you know, he was just a regular guy who had the same kind of struggles as we all do. That to me is a special kind of privilege.
Adria, is there anything about your father that still surprises you?
Yeah, always. You know, what's interesting to me about this film, there's a lot of interesting things about the film to me because of the way Mari and Mary framed them. Obviously, it's really hard to watch this film for me. It's like been really a painful process. To go through the footage is even harder than the music because obviously it's like every little, you know, facial recognition of him and the shorthand that we had. It's like I see a lot of different emotions sort of run through his face, but what I learned is just like how he does that shorthand with the band. Like when Ben doesn't remember the bridge and he's like, run, dun, 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 you know, or there's like little moments with Howie where you're like, man, I've never heard them sing out of tune. I've never heard them working on a part. Do you know what I mean? Like they're always perfect. They're always completely perfect, you know? So Phil Everly used to say to his son, before there was Pro Tools, there was pros. And it's like my dad and his generation like to be pros.
There's a great moment in the film where Mike Campbell, when he's sitting with Rick and Benmont outside, Mike says, you know, the thing about this record is that everything was tracked by humans. There were no machines. And I think this film does a great job of telling the story of a record that just never gets old. If anything, it gets better with age. The film, Tom Petty, Somewhere You Feel Free. something you all should see when you get the chance. The making of Tom Petty's Wildflowers. I want to thank Adria Petty, Mary Wharton, the director, Peter Afterman, producer, Mari, Keiko, Gonzalez, editor, Sarah Haber, co-producer. I'm David Fricke. I'm chopped liver around here. These people did all the hard work, and they deserve your congratulations, and they deserve you going to see this film any way you can, somewhere you feel free. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
How y'all doing in there? You know the difference between a frog and a trombone player walking down the road? Frog's going to a gig.